Rome Reports comes to you from the Department of Social Communications, Catholic Archdiocese of Accra, this and every Sunday from 3:30 to 4 p.m. on GTV.
Our family has spanned the centuries and the globe. With God's grace, we started hospitals to care for the sick. We established orphanages and help the poor. We are the largest charitable organization on the planet, bringing comfort to those in need. We educate more children than any other institution. We developed the scientific method and founded the college system. We defend the dignity of human life and uphold marriage. Guided by the Holy Spirit, we compiled the Bible. We are transformed by sacred scripture and sacred tradition, which have guided us for 2,000 years. We are the Catholic Church. With over 1 billion in our family, sharing in the sacraments and fullness of the Christian faith. Jesus started our church when he said to Peter, the first pope, "You are rock, and upon this rock I will build my church." So if you've been away from the Catholic Church, we invite you to take another look. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org today. We are Catholic. Welcome home.
Coming up in today's show, Pope supports biggest global peace initiative in the last decades. One of the world's most important basilicas could be converted into a mosque. The pen used to sign the dogma of infallibility is put on display. All this and much more here on Rome Reports. From the window of the Apostolic Palace, the Pope asked the international community for unity in the face of the consequences from the pandemic. Specifically, he praised the UN Security Council for supporting the global ceasefire. Pope Francis asked that this gesture become the first step to a stable future of peace.
È lodevole la richiesta di un cessate il fuoco globale e immediato, che permetterebbe la pace e la sicurezza indispensabile per fornire l'assistenza umanitaria così urgentemente necessaria. Auspico che tale decisione venga attuata effettivamente e tempestivamente per il bene di tante persone che stanno soffrendo.
During the Angelus, the Pope said, "Today Jesus speaks to all men of goodwill. He gives them the strength to be builders of the new humanity."
Il mondo esalta al ricco e potente, non importa con quali mezzi, e a volte calpesta la persona umana e la sua dignità. E questo noi lo vediamo tutti i giorni, i poveri calpestati. Ed è un messaggio per la Chiesa, chiamata a vivere le opere di misericordia, a evangelizzare i poveri.
Furthermore, the Pope explained that Jesus is the model of the poor in spirit and of the blessed. He said that true wisdom also comes from the heart. It's not just understanding ideas. On July 1st, 2020, the UN Security Council unanimously adopted a resolution endorsing a March 23rd appeal by UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres for an immediate global ceasefire during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The call yielded some positive results, but these have since expired or in some cases broken down. The Council has an important role to bring its voice and influence to bear on these situations, and I welcome your support expressed in the resolution adopted yesterday.
The Council calls for the immediate cessation of all armed conflicts for at least 90 days in order to enable the safe and sustained delivery of humanitarian aid to those impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, allowing also for medical evacuations. The resolution also states that the ceasefire does not apply to ongoing military operations against extremist groups, including Daesh, Al-Qaeda, and Al-Nusra Front. The resolution was drafted by Tunisia and France, then approved by the 15 council members, each representing a different country.
We achieved a good result because we managed to keep the focus on the expectation from the international community and from the invitation of the Secretary General, meaning a cessation of hostilities and the implementation of humanitarian access.
Politicizing and stigmatizing lead to nowhere. Countries should take up responsibilities, respect the science, replace differences with unity, dispel prejudice with reason, form synergies in the global fight, and build a better future for all.
During the Sunday Angelus, Pope Francis also praised the Security Council for taking this concrete step toward peace, especially during the health crisis. The Pope had already shown support for Antonio Guterres' initial call for a global ceasefire in March. Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin met with U.S. Ambassador Kalisa Gingrich and Israeli Ambassador Oren David to discuss the Holy See's concern regarding Israel's plan to annex Palestinian territory. In a statement, the Vatican says these unilateral actions may further jeopardize the search for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, as well as the delicate situation in the Middle East. The Vatican is in favor of a two-state solution in which the State of Israel and the State of Palestine have the right to exist and to live in peace and security within internationally recognized borders. The Israeli Prime Minister has been pushing to annex territory in the West Bank, which the Palestinians have been trying to use for their own future state. The Trump administration supports annexation. The announcement of the West Bank annexation plan was set for July 1st, but has been pushed back to allow for further deliberations. Benedict XVI's older brother died at 96 years of age in Regensburg. The two were always very close, even when Joseph was elected Pope. His first conversation after the papal election was with Frau Heidel. I no longer went to answer the phone because it rang and rang, and always there were journalists on the other end, asking the same questions 100 times, and so I left it alone and thought, nuts to you, as we say in Bavaria, but Frau Heidel went to answer it, and suddenly she recognized that on the other end of the line there was the Holy Father, so she was rather excited, delighted, and surprised. When I finally talked to him, there was nothing different about it. Our fraternal relationship has not really changed. It was just my brother, and we spoke as we always had. Georg Ratzinger was Benedict XVI's only close family member still alive. His sister Maria passed away in 1991. Georg's relationship with Benedict XVI was very tight. Both were ordained priests together, and they shared a passion for classical music. In fact, Georg directed the children's choir at the Cathedral of Regensburg. Georg could be spotted at the Vatican from time to time visiting his brother. Both left behind moving scenes, like this one from Benedict XVI's 90th birthday celebration at the Vatican. Pope Francis wrote a letter of condolences to his predecessor on the death of the Pope Emeritus, his brother, Georg Ratzinger. The Pope begins the letter thanking Benedict for personally sharing the news of Georg's death with him before making it public. Pope Francis writes he is praying for the Pope Emeritus and his deceased brother before signing the letter filially and fraternally. In mid-June, Benedict XVI traveled to Germany to say goodbye to his brother Georg. He was 96 years old and was his last living close relative. The grand composer and two-time Oscar winner Ennio Morricone died the morning of July 6 in a hospital in Rome. He was 91 years old and had broken his femur only a few days before. His lawyer said he received the comfort of faith and that he was accompanied by his family. One of his final works was a Mass for Pope Francis. He dedicated it to the pontiff on the 200th anniversary of the restoration of the Jesuits in the Jesuit Church in Rome. The Italian composer was one of the greats of the 20th century cinema. Soundtracks like those for The Mission and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly have been engraved in the collective memory of entire generations. During the quarantine, young people like Jacopo played Morricone's most famous songs from the balconies of their homes in Rome. The virus allowed the whole country to come to terms with its fragility. Morricone's songs reminded them that even the person next door can attain great heights, just like the Italian composer did when he conquered Hollywood. Ennio Morricone produced scores for about 500 films and series, and he sold 70 million albums. In 2007, he received an honorary Oscar for his contributions to film music, and in 2016, an Oscar for Best Original Score for his work on the film The Hateful Eight. Coming up after the break, Cardinal Pell inaugurates a master's program on managing church finances. You are watching Rome Reports.
We believe that grace works through nature.
Cardinal George Pell made one of his first appearances after being acquitted, speaking about finances and handling money within the church. It was a virtual meeting for the launch of the Global Institute of Church Management, a U.S.-based nonprofit lay organization which will help the church apply best practices in management.
Undoubtedly, money is one of God's gifts. It is also a source of temptation. To say that the church is not a business provides no justification for us to be inefficient, much less for us to be corrupt.
He said it's important to have basic knowledge of economics, finance, business ethics, and social teaching. Pell even mentioned his previous role, reforming Vatican finances.
And I said that it was harder to convert a person to Christ than to reform the Vatican finances.
Thus, he expressed his gratitude for efforts to help priests and lay people understand how to effectively work in church management roles.
When we come to look at church enterprises, the way we serve the people, it isn't sufficient to have to be regularly praying, to be persons of strong faith. We have to be able to put our vision into action. So that means we have to be able to implement our service to people. We have to be able to deal with other people.
He congratulated the Institute for building partnerships, creating resources that support church teaching, and continuing to research new and effective practices to be implemented in parishes around the world.
St. Sophia was what for Catholics today is St. Peter's. It was the seat of the Patriarch of Constantinople, the city that, after the fall of the Roman Empire, became the political and cultural capital of the Western world. Western Europe, from Byzantium's perspective, was a chaotic world. The city of Rome had less than 20,000 inhabitants. Byzantium, in turn, was the cradle of culture. Historians say that in the Byzantine Empire, people would go to bakeries and discuss theology. Nevertheless, in 1453, the city fell to Sultan Mehmed II's army. The basilica was turned into a mosque until nearly 500 years later, it was converted into a museum. This was ordered by the so-called founder of modern-day Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. The decision sought to reconcile Christians and Muslims. Nonetheless, the Turkey Council of State has chosen to take the matter to President Erdogan, who now has the final say. The topic has raised tensions on the international level. The U.S. Secretary of State has asked that the current status quo be respected. Greece, an Orthodox country close to Turkey, has asked UNESCO to intervene. St. Sophia was the seat of the Patriarch of Constantinople, who has also asked that its current function as a museum not be changed, in order to prevent it from becoming a reason for clashes and conflict. At the political level, the president of Turkey will have to gauge whether it's worth making more enemies in the West in order to gain favor with some of the country's Islamic groups. Opus Dei prelate Fernando Ocaris virtually met with medical professionals who have worked on the front lines during the pandemic. They told him moving stories. Some were in hospitals run by Opus Dei. For example, in Nigeria, doctors and nurses unanimously decided that they would not leave patients alone.
Many private hospitals tend to have the approach of rejecting and turning back patients that have the slightest symptoms related to COVID-19.
Those we have cared for here were those excluded, those who in other centers did not find a place. They were very old people, those with advanced cancer, people with Alzheimer's. We also learned how to tell what they wanted, from listening to a particular type of music to eating ice cream or even a plate of amatriciana pasta, which wasn't difficult to find in Rome. We already have 4 patients who have recovered, one of which is 97 years old, another 91, another 76 with diabetes, and the 4th person is a 27-year-old boy who celebrated his birthday at the Solidarity Hospital a few days ago. In Spain, a doctor suddenly found herself in the eye of the hurricane. She highlighted the generosity of professionals, regardless of their religion. From a medical point of view, when we couldn't do anything else, we realized we could do more in a different way. We often dried tears, said a few comforting words, and reiterated the messages their families shared with them by phone. Fernando Ocaris thanked them for their actions to respect the dignity of each patient until the final moment of their lives. I encourage you to continue working as you are already doing, with much encouragement. To take the experiences we have all had, you in a more direct way. There are so many good people, so many people who have been risking their lives, going above and beyond the professional duty they had as doctors, nurses, cleaning personnel, and more. They exceeded themselves by helping others. In addition, the prelate of Opus Dei celebrated a Mass in Rome next to the tomb of Saint Jose Maria to pray for the victims of the coronavirus and their families. Those of us who participate in this Holy Mass, in person or via web, unite ourselves with love and prayer to all those suffering in the world. We entrust ourselves to the deceased so that from heaven, with Saint Jose Maria on his feast day, they intercede for all of us. In the homily, he also highlighted that, along with suffering, the pandemic has shown the generosity, creativity, initiative, and selfless work of many people. He recalled the work of healthcare workers, security personnel, priests, and parents in their own homes.
What is the best-selling novel in history? Don Quixote. David Copperfield. The Little Prince. You're watching Rome Reports. What is the best-selling novel in history? Don Quixote. David Copperfield. The Little Prince. The correct answer is A. Don Quixote has sold around 500 million copies. You're watching Rome Reports.
In the signing of any significant document, there's one object that often goes unnoticed, but that can be considered a sort of silent witness, the pen.
La penna, storicamente.
The pen, historically and still today, means someone with authority assumes responsibility. In this way, the king, the pope, the emperor accept something in writing. When we accept a contract, we assume responsibility. For example, with this pen, Pius IX signed one of the most important dogmas of the Church 150 years ago, before the fall of the Papal States. The dogma was about papal infallibility. There were 700 bishops on the council who had already left Rome. However, they had time to approve two important documents, one about faith and reason, and the other about the Church and the infallibility of the Pope on questions regarding faith and morality. Pius IX established that the Pope doesn't err on doctrinal issues when he makes an ex cathedra statement. This is one of the most important points of the First Vatican Council, which had to be temporarily suspended because of a raging battle. The first cannon blast breached the Vatican walls near Porta Pia. The Pope immediately called for an end to the battle in order to avoid more deaths. He ordered General Kanzler, head of the Pontifical Army, to sign Rome's surrender. That pact was signed with this pen, which was preserved along with a signature of the general himself. Both relics of the history of the Church are on display at the Arte Poli Gallery, a few yards from the Vatican. It's an ambitious project that safeguards relics of the pontiffs and of Church history. We collect these items to prevent them from being lost. We've collected 500 papal objects, 17,000 photographs, 12,000 books, and 600 papal autographs. The goal is to collect these items, which would otherwise be lost, and build a museum in which to put them on display. Recent additions to the collection include these two historical pens from Pius IX's pontificate and other items belonging to the Pope. Among these are one of the vestments he wore for several years and a first-class relic.
The Blessed Mother, seen and reflected on from an artistic point of view, is the basis of Joan Fumahony's new book, Millennials Meet Mary. It's a compilation of Marian art reviews from 80 millennials from 42 countries. They each reflect on Jesus' mother from their various backgrounds, which Joan says is the A to Z, starting with Argentina and Armenia and ending with Zimbabwe.
And I thought, well, young people today are not really that interested in religion. However, they are interested in art. They are interested in a good story. And you can't beat the story of Mary. And they are very interested in changing the world. I thought, okay, I'll write a book, use the artworks, and get the millennials to reflect on it in terms of their lives, their hopes, their dreams. And it actually worked out beautifully.
She paired each millennial with a piece of art they could relate to. For example, a Syrian refugee wrote on Joseph and Mary's flight to Egypt, and a newlywed on the marriage of Joseph and Mary. In the 9 months it took to make the book, hearts were transformed, beginning with the authors, who strayed from the faith but found it again with her husband's influence.
You can't be married and live with someone Catholic and not be affected by it, presently in my case. So, well, my journey back has been slow, but eventually I did come back, Jesus. But really it really has been through his mother. I love Mary, and writing about her life has brought me so much closer to her son.
As a result of the pandemic, she launched the book via Zoom conference with the Vatican museums. Joan wanted the book to be available for millennials. She thus made a PDF of the book available for online download, as it's being printed and made available for purchase. While it's not specifically a theological text, proceeds of the 432-page book will go to the Church. It's the author's way of giving a part of herself back to God through the labor and beautiful works contained in this book.
difficult moments are full of opportunity and hope. That's the reminder Unai Quiros gives with his new musical theme, Todos Juntos Adelante, in English, Altogether Forward. Todos Juntos Adelante is a song mainly about hope. It's a little about seeing how the pandemic has changed our lives, about seeing that although it's changed our lives, we have to continue to move forward, and above all, together, to not leave anyone behind. The musical theme also demonstrates social responsibility. Proceeds collected from the song and Unai Quiros' YouTube channel will be donated to Caritas' work in Málaga. He says he's taken advantage of the quarantine to more deeply live with a sense of family unity. My wife and I have tried to teach our children to appreciate and value what they have. These moments in which you see how the world comes crumbling down around people without food, without homes, people who are losing their loved ones, these are the moments in which to give thanks for everything the Lord gives us. This Catholic singer assures that he'll continue to use his voice to bring hope to people, and to remind them that the calm always follows the storm.
In our next program, we'll take you to the Pope's Mass praying for migrants. This and much more here on Rome Reports.
Are not using their minds to reason. And those who only rely on reason to interpret reality are turning their backs on the gift of faith. Well, the perfect solution involves a marriage of both faith and reason. See, God knew that we would be full of questions, big questions as large as our universe. And God created us with intellects to wonder, dream, and philosophize. Yet God asks us to believe in some truths that we can't see with our eyes. We can arrive at perfect truth when we choose to see with the eyes of faith while we reason with our minds. And our faith can truly blossom when we explore it with our mind. Maybe St. Augustine said it best. I believe in order to understand, and I understand in order to believe.
Live true. Live Catholic. Live Catholic.
For over 2,000 years, the Catholic Church has consistently transformed through sacred scriptures and sacred tradition. It is comforting to know that some things remain consistent. Live truth, live Catholic. Visit our shop at Shiashi, opposite Gethsemane Cemetery, and find for yourselves the following: monstrance, chalice, candles, clerical shirts, Bibles, writings of the early church fathers, and other sacramentals. For more information, contact Live Truth, Live Catholic Bookshop on 020-222-0376 or 024-960-6155. Live Truth, Live Catholic, your number one stop shop for your religious items.
Rome Reports comes to you from the Department of Social Communications, Catholic Archdiocese of Accra. This and every Sunday from 3:30 to 4 p.m. on GTV.